The taste of freedom felt bittersweet as I walked out of county jail that morning. 3 months locked up for failing to pay child support for a child that DNA proved was not mine. I should have felt only anger toward Jessica, but my thoughts kept returning to little Lucas. That innocent 3-year-old boy who called me daddy for the first years of his life did not deserve any of this chaos. If you are watching this, let me know where you are from. In the comments, hit subscribe, and tell me what you would do if you discovered the child you loved was not biologically yours. My name is Roman, a 34-year-old construction engineer from Chicago. I grew up in a hard-working family where my father spent 30 years at the local factory, and my mother worked night shifts as a nurse to make sure we never went without. Their example taught me the value of honesty, reliability, and putting family first. Those principles guided me through college, on a scholarship where I graduated with honors in civil engineering. I met Jessica at a volunteer project building homes for the homeless. She was 29, beautiful, with her auburn hair and quick smile, working as a public relations specialist for the nonprofit organizing the build. What caught my attention was not just her looks, but her apparent passion for helping others. Our first conversation lasted hours after everyone else had gone home, discovering shared interests in hiking classic films and community service. Dating Jessica felt like finding the missing piece in my life puzzle. She supported my career ambitions, celebrated my promotions, and seemed to share my values about building a solid future together. After a year of dating, we had a small but intimate wedding in her parents' backyard with just 50 guests. I remember feeling like the luckiest man alive that day, certain I had found my forever partner. We bought our first home in a quiet suburb with good schools, planning ahead for the family we both said we wanted. My career was taking off, having recently been promoted to project manager at my firm. Our finances were solid, with a comfortable emergency fund and retirement accounts growing steadily. We spent evenings planning our future, talking about how many children we wanted and the places we would take them. Everything seemed perfect, a testament to hard work and making good choices. 2 years into our marriage, Jessica told me she was pregnant. I cannot describe the joy I felt hearing those words. That night I drove to 3 different stores looking for the perfect stuffed animal to be our future child's first toy. I attended every birthing class, read parenting books during lunch breaks, and spent weekends converting our spare bedroom into a nursery. We decided if it was a boy, we would name him Lucas, after my grandfather. As her pregnancy progressed, I began noticing subtle changes in Jessica that went beyond normal pregnancy mood swings. She became increasingly distant, often returning home late from work without explanation. When I offered to accompany her to doctor appointments, she insisted on going alone, saying she preferred privacy with her female doctor. I would discover her having hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room, or texting messages she would quickly delete. My concerns were met with irritation and accusations that I was being controlling. Being a first-time father-to-be, I convinced myself this was all normal pregnancy behavior, hormonal changes affecting her emotions. I made excuses for her, telling myself she was under stress at work, and tried harder to be understanding and supportive. Even when my parents expressed concern about her behavior, I defended her, believing that patience and love would see us through this temporary rough patch. The night Lucas was born remains a blur of contradictory emotions. Jessica went into labor 3 weeks early, and I rushed her to the hospital at 2 in the morning, heart pounding with excitement and fear. When we arrived, Jessica surprised me by requesting I stay in the waiting room rather than join her in the delivery room. "The doctors and nurses will take care of me," she insisted. "I will be more comfortable with just medical staff." I spent 12 anxious hours pacing the waiting room floor, calling family members with updates based on the minimal information nurses would share. When a nurse finally brought me to see my wife and newborn son, the moment should have been pure joy, but something felt off. Looking at tiny Lucas in the hospital bassinet, I searched for my features in his face but found none. He had darker skin than either Jessica or I, with a distinctly different nose shape and hair texture. "He takes after my grandmother," Jessica explained, when she noticed my confusion. I nodded and pushed away the flicker of doubt, ashamed for even having such thoughts on what should be the happiest day of my life. In those early months, I threw myself into fatherhood, while Jessica seemed to withdraw from both me and Lucas. She refused to breastfeed, claiming it was too painful, and often left me alone with the baby for hours. I adjusted my work schedule, taking late-night feedings and early morning diaper changes. Despite my exhaustion, I treasured those quiet moments, rocking Lucas back to sleep, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. While Lucas thrived under my care, Jessica grew increasingly critical of my parenting. Nothing I did was right in her eyes. She complained about how I changed diapers, prepared formula, or soothed his cries. Meanwhile, friends and family members occasionally made comments that stung despite my attempts to ignore them. "He sure does not look like you, Roman." "Must take after Jessica family," my coworker remarked at the office baby shower. I smiled politely while something cold settled in my stomach. As Lucas reached his 6-month milestone, Jessica's behavior became more erratic. She started going out several nights a week, claiming she needed girl time to maintain her sanity. One night while searching for the baby monitor, I found her phone lighting up with text messages from someone saved as TW. The message preview read, "Miss you. When can you get away again?" When I confronted her, Jessica turned the situation around with frightening skill. "How dare you? Look at my private messages. This controlling behavior is exactly why I need space from you." Her outburst left me apologizing, somehow feeling guilty for discovering her apparent betrayal. Our arguments increased in frequency and intensity. Jessica would scream that I was a terrible father who did not know what Lucas needed, despite the fact that I was handling most of the childcare. Neighbors could sometimes hear our fights, and I noticed them giving me sidelong glances when I took Lucas for stroller walks around the neighborhood. Despite the deteriorating state of our marriage, I clung to hope that we could work things out for Lucas' sake. I suggested counseling, which Jessica reluctantly attended twice before declaring it a waste of time. I was trying to save a marriage that in retrospect was already long dead. When Lucas was 8 months old, I came home from work to find divorce papers on the kitchen counter. Jessica had hired Alan Thompson, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in Chicago, known for securing favorable outcomes for mothers in custody battles. The documents painted me as neglectful and emotionally abusive, claims so far from reality that I could hardly believe Jessica had made them. "I just cannot do this anymore," was all she said when I asked for an explanation. "We were a mistake from the beginning. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Jessica's attorney portrayed me as a workaholic who contributed little to Lucas' care despite evidence to the contrary. I could not afford a high-powered attorney like Thompson, so I represented myself as best I could, bringing photo albums documenting my involvement in Lucas' life and testimonials from neighbors who had witnessed my dedicated parenting. None of it mattered. The judge seemed to have made his decision before hearing all the evidence. I was ordered to pay $3,000 monthly in child support, an amount that would strain my finances even with my good salary. Worse, I was granted only weekly supervised visitation with Lucas, as if I were some danger to him. I left the courtroom that day feeling as though I had been punched in the stomach. Still, I was determined to be the best father I could be within the constraints imposed. I set up automatic payments for child support and created a special area in my new apartment, just for Lucas, with toys, books, and photos of us together. Then the recession hit. The construction company I worked for went bankrupt after 10 years of steady business. Projects dried up across the city and experienced engineers were being laid off everywhere. After months of searching, I could only find temporary work paying less than half my previous salary. I used my entire savings to keep up with child support payments for 4 months, while searching desperately for better employment. When it became clear my financial situation would not improve quickly, I filed a petition with the court to temporarily reduce my support payments until I found stable employment. Jessica and her attorney fought my petition viciously, accusing me of deliberately taking lower-paying jobs to avoid my obligations. The judge denied my request, stating that as a professional, I should be able to find appropriate employment. No consideration was given to the economic reality facing the construction industry. After 6 months of scraping together whatever I could to make partial payments, falling further behind, each month Jessica filed for enforcement of the court order. Late one night, there was a pounding on the door of my small rented studio apartment. 2 police officers stood there with a warrant for my arrest for failure to pay child support. The humiliation of being handcuffed and led past curious neighbors to the police car is something I will never forget. The judge at my hearing, Andrew Pierce, showed no sympathy for my circumstances. "The court ordered you to provide for your child, and you have failed to do so," he declared sternly. "Perhaps 3 months in county jail will help you reconsider your priorities." As they led me away to begin my sentence, all I could think about was Lucas. Not only was I being punished for failing to provide financially, but now I would miss my weekly visits with him. Would he think I had abandoned him? At 3 years old, how would he understand my absence? County jail was a shock to my system. I had never even had a speeding ticket before, and suddenly I was sleeping on a thin mattress in a crowded cell, surrounded by men accused of drug dealing, theft, and assault. Many inmates laughed when they learned why I was there, calling me a deadbeat dad despite my attempts to explain the circumstances. Surprisingly, I was not alone in my situation. I met several other men incarcerated for falling behind on child support payments, many with similar stories of job loss, medical problems, or other financial setbacks. One man, Jorge, had been jailed 3 separate times, despite working 2 jobs trying to keep up with payments. At night, lying awake, listening to the constant noise of the jail, I had plenty of time to reflect on my marriage and fatherhood. The doubts I had suppressed about Lucas' paternity resurfaced. The timing of Jessica's pregnancy, her secretive behavior, Lucas' appearance, her eagerness to exclude me from prenatal appointments, all suddenly formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. During my second week in jail, I heard about a volunteer legal clinic that operated within the facility. There I met David Bennett, a kind-faced attorney who spent his retirement years helping inmates navigate the legal system. When I shared my complete story with him, including my growing suspicion that Lucas might not be my biological child, he listened without judgment. "Have you ever considered requesting a paternity test?" he asked after I finished speaking. The question sent conflicting emotions through me. Part of me wanted confirmation of what I increasingly suspected, yet another part feared what that truth might mean for my relationship with Lucas, whom I loved dearly regardless of biology. "I feel guilty even considering it," I admitted. "Like I am betraying Lucas by questioning if he is mine." David leaned forward, his expression compassionate but serious. "Roman, seeking the truth is not a betrayal. If your suspicions are correct, Jessica has committed fraud against both you and the court. You have rights here, and confirming paternity would address the root issue." With David's guidance, I filed a motion requesting a court-ordered DNA test. When Jessica was served with the motion, her reaction was explosive. Her attorney filed an immediate objection, claiming my request was merely a tactic to avoid financial responsibility and would traumatize Lucas. At the hearing to consider my motion, I was brought from jail in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit, standing before the court like a criminal. This time, however, I had David representing me pro bono. The case had been assigned to a different judge, Harriet Wilson, who listened attentively as David presented our arguments. "Your Honor, my client has faithfully tried to meet his obligations despite extreme financial hardship," David explained. "He has never attempted to evade responsibility for a child he loves. He simply seeks to establish the truth, which is fundamental to any just proceeding." Jessica sat across the courtroom, whispering furiously to her attorney throughout David's presentation. When Judge Wilson indicated she was inclined to grant the paternity test, Jessica suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "He is just trying to get out of paying what he owes." Her uncharacteristic outburst seemed to confirm my suspicions, and apparently made an impression on Judge Wilson as well. The judge ordered the DNA test to proceed within the week, with samples to be taken from both Lucas and me. The day the results arrived was one I will never forget. David came to visit me in jail, his expression telling me everything before he even spoke. The test was conclusive. "Roman, you are not Lucas' biological father. 0% probability of paternity." Despite having suspected this outcome, hearing it confirmed hit me like a physical blow. I had built my life around being Lucas' father. Every decision, every sacrifice had been made with him in mind. Now I learned it had all been based on a lie. Judge Wilson called an emergency hearing where Jessica was compelled to testify under oath. Faced with irrefutable evidence and the threat of perjury charges, Jessica finally admitted the truth. She had been having an affair with her co-worker Tyler Wilson and knew from the beginning that he was Lucas' biological father. Why, I asked her directly in the courtroom, my voice breaking. "Why would you lie about something so important?" Jessica looked down at her hands. "Tyler wanted nothing to do with the pregnancy. He threatened to quit his job if I told anyone. I was scared of being a single mother. You were stable, reliable. I thought it would work out for everyone." Judge Wilson was visibly disturbed by Jessica's testimony. She immediately vacated all child support orders and cleared my record of any related charges. "Mr. Roman," she said, her voice unusually gentle, "for a judge on behalf of the court system, I extend our sincere apologies for what you have endured. You are ordered to be released immediately, After 2 months and 15 days in county jail, I walked out a free man, vindicated but deeply wounded. The taste of freedom was bittersweet, clouded by thoughts of Lucas, an innocent child caught in adult deception. I arranged to meet Jessica at her attorney office the following week. Face to face, without the constraints of the courtroom, I wanted answers. "I know what you did," I told her. "What I do not understand is how you could do it knowing what it might cost everyone involved." Jessica looked thinner, diminished somehow. "Tyler and I had been involved for almost a year before our wedding," she admitted. "When I got pregnant, he said he was not ready to be a father. He gave me an ultimatum, him or the baby. I chose the baby, but I was terrified of doing it alone. So you decided to trap me instead." The anger I had suppressed for so long threatened to overwhelm me. "I convinced myself it would work out," she said quietly. "That you would never know that you would love Lucas as your own, which you did. When you started having financial problems, I panicked. Everything was falling apart and I lashed out. I left that meeting determined to cut all ties with both Jessica and Lucas. The betrayal felt too deep, too calculated to forgive. I changed my phone number, found a new apartment across town, and focused on rebuilding my career. I told myself Lucas would be better off without me confusing his young life. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Allison, our former neighbor. She had kept my work contact information from when I had helped with her basement renovation. "I am worried about Lucas," she said without preamble. "Jessica has not been handling things well since the court case. The house is a mess. She looks terrible, and I rarely see her take Lucas out anymore." Despite my resolution to stay away, concern for Lucas overrode my determination. That evening, I drove past our old house. Seeing lights on, I made the impulsive decision to knock. No one answered, but I could hear Lucas crying inside. Using the spare key I still had, I entered cautiously, calling Jessica's name. The house was nearly unrecognizable. Empty wine bottles littered the coffee table, dirty dishes filled the sink, and toys were scattered everywhere. I found Lucas in his room, hungry and wearing dirty pajamas. Jessica was passed out on her bed, an empty prescription bottle beside her. After ensuring Jessica was breathing and just sleeping, not in medical danger, I cleaned Lucas up and made him dinner. As I helped him into fresh clothes, his small arms wrapped around my neck. "Daddy, you came back," he said, his voice filled with a trust and love that broke my heart. In that moment, I realized something profound. Biology did not make me Lucas' father. Our connection, built through thousands of small moments together, had created a bond that DNA could never replace. The next day, I contacted Child Protective Services and reported what I had found. I also called David Bennett, asking if there was any legal way I could help Lucas, despite not being his biological father. Actually, David explained there is precedent for non-biological parents who have established a parental relationship to petition for custody, especially if the biological parents are unable or unwilling to provide proper care. With David's guidance, I filed for temporary custody of Lucas. When confronted by social workers, Jessica admitted she was struggling with depression and alcohol abuse. Tyler Wilson, when located and informed of the situation, signed papers relinquishing any parental claims, stating he had no interest in being a father. The custody hearing was an emotional experience. I testified about my bond with Lucas, emphasizing that despite the lack of biological connection, I had been his primary caretaker for much of his life. A child psychologist who had evaluated Lucas testified that he was securely attached to me and that disrupting our relationship would cause him significant emotional harm. Judge Wilson, who had presided over my paternity case, also handled the custody hearing. After reviewing all evidence, she made an unprecedented decision. The court finds that Mr. Roman has established himself as a psychological parent to Lucas, creating a bond that serves the child's best interests. Despite the absence of biological connection, the nurturing relationship he has provided constitutes a de facto parental relationship worthy of legal recognition. She granted me full legal custody of Lucas, with provisions for Jessica to have supervised visitation once she completed treatment for her depression and substance abuse issues. As we left the courtroom, Lucas holding my hand tightly, he looked up at me with complete trust. "We going home now, Dad?" he asked simply. "Yes, buddy," I replied, my throat tight with emotion. "We are going home." The journey toward healing began slowly for both Lucas and me. We moved into a new apartment in a safe neighborhood close to a good preschool. I found a position with an architectural firm that offered more stable hours than my previous construction management jobs, allowing me to be home consistently for Lucas. The first few months were challenging. Lucas had nightmares and separation anxiety clinging to me whenever I needed to leave for work. I arranged for a child psychologist specialized in family trauma to work with him weekly. Dr. Samantha Taylor helped Lucas process his feelings of abandonment and confusion in age-appropriate ways, through play therapy and art. Children are remarkably resilient. Dr. Taylor assured me after a particularly difficult session, what Lucas needs most is stability and consistent love, which you are providing. Being a single father came with its own learning curve. I had to master the art of detangling hair, navigate the politics of preschool playdates, and learn to handle public assumptions that I must be giving Mom a break when out alone with Lucas. But each challenge overcome strengthened our bond. Lucas blossomed in preschool, making friends easily, and showing a natural aptitude for building and drawing. His teacher remarked on his kindness toward other children, a quality that filled me with pride. Watching him grow more confident and secure validated my decision to remain in his life regardless of biology. Meanwhile, Jessica was making her own difficult journey. 6 months after losing custody, she completed an intensive rehabilitation program and began therapy for depression. When she requested to see Lucas, I was initially reluctant, remembering the harm her actions had caused us both. "I know I can never undo what I did," she said during our carefully arranged meeting at a neutral location, "but I want to try to be better for Lucas' sake. He deserves to know his mother loves him, even if she messed up terribly." Her sincerity and the progress she had demonstrated convinced me to allow supervised visits. The first reunion between mother and son was awkward, but ultimately healing for Lucas, who had been asking questions about her absence. Over time, Jessica proved her commitment to recovery, maintaining sobriety, and following through on every promise she made to Lucas. As Jessica stabilized, we gradually established a co-productive parenting relationship focused solely on Lucas' well-being. The bitterness I had harbored began to fade, replaced by a pragmatic understanding that holding on to anger only harmed me and potentially Lucas. I would never fully trust Jessica again, but I could work with her for our son's sake. Throughout this process, I came to several profound realizations about fatherhood and family. The definition of parenthood I had grown up with, rooted strictly in biology and legal obligation, now seemed incomplete. True parenthood, I discovered, was built daily through presence, patience, and unwavering love, not determined by genetic connection. I also learned that forgiveness does not mean condoning wrongs or forgetting pain. Rather, it means refusing to let bitterness define your future. Choosing to forgive Jessica was ultimately an act of self-preservation, and a gift to Lucas, who deserved adults in his life who could interact respectfully despite their history. Today, Lucas is 6 years old, excelling in first grade, and passionate about soccer and building elaborate structures with his blocks. He knows that Tyler is his biological father, but has shown little interest in meeting him. To Lucas, I am simply Dad, the person who has always been there. Jessica has maintained her recovery and now has regular, unsupervised visitation. We coordinate holidays and school events with minimal conflict, focusing on Lucas' needs rather than our complicated past. The relationship is not perfect, but it works for the most important person involved, our son. As for me, I have recently begun dating Margaret, a kindergarten teacher I met at Lucas' school. She understands and respects the journey Lucas and I have traveled together. My definition of family has expanded beyond what I ever imagined possible in those dark days in a jail cell. What makes someone a father? Is it contributing DNA? Or is it waking up for midnight fevers, celebrating first steps, and teaching values through daily example? In my experience, biology creates potential, but choice and commitment create parenthood. Every day I choose Lucas, and every day he chooses me back. I often think about what would have happened if I had walked away after discovering the truth, if I had allowed anger and betrayal to dictate my decisions. I would have missed watching Lucas develop his infectious laugh, his compassion for others, and his curious mind. The legal system initially failed us both, but ultimately created the circumstances that clarified what matters most. I never expected my life to take this path, but standing here now as Lucas' father, I would not trade it for any other. The greatest gift often comes disguised as our greatest challenge. Have you ever discovered unexpected blessings from difficult circumstances? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about redefining family and finding strength in unexpected places. Remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes our most important relationships are those we choose, not those we are born into. Thank you for listening. And remember that true family is built with love, not just blood.